What up? How's it going, everybody? Welcome into the stream, presented by Hastings Layers Premium Eggs, of course. Let me know if you can see me. Let me know if you can hear me as I get this thing pulled up on the old YouTube machine, powered by StreamYard. A little different to use that technology, but I think it's working good. I think it's been good. I didn't want to go on Twitter tonight because I didn't want people on Twitter are already sad enough. You have to come find the pain if you're looking for it tonight. That was the decision that I made. So let's pull it on up, pull it on in, as the Cardinals lose again. Didn't really score very much again. And so I thought folks might want to come on and vent. I will defer to you guys. There could be questions about roster moves from today. There could be thoughts about the game. Let the comments flow. I will try to bounce off of them and use it as the commentary. I got to be real with you. I was thinking if I don't do it live, I might not have a podcast tonight because I don't know what more there is to say without being prompted by the great fans of Cardinals Nation. So let me know what you guys have on your mind tonight. Sounds like the stream, y'all can hear me and everything. Hit like on the stream. Let's get the likes going, and let's have a little vent sesh. I haven't really teased channel memberships in a while. If that's something people want, I know this since it's a Cardinals channel, now might not be the time to plug the memberships. But if anybody is inclined and they still enjoy the coverage, they maybe not the product on the field. That's probably not making you too happy right now. But as far as the channel goes, I want to give some member shout outs real quick before we get started while people file in. Let the questions go down there. I'll read the whole chat. Hunter's in here mentioning the fantasy football page. I am so close to monetization on that fantasy page that I might even still do a live stream after this is over. We won't go super late on this one tonight because I can't imagine there's going to be a lot of thoughts. Maybe there will be. Jovero says Motter was a more impactful Cardinal than Crawford. Ouch. And I don't even know if that is incorrect to say, statistically speaking. I'm looking now. His OPS, yeah, that's not really true. His OPS was 442. Crawford was like 540. I think Motter had a higher batting average, though, 171 to 169. So that's kind of the way it be. All right, though, I am going to kick things off. The whole thing is coming on the stream. So what's going on, everyone? Welcome into this edition of B-Schaeff Daily Live. Brenden Schaeffer here, talking some Cardinals. You guys are not thrilled, and I understand that. The Cardinals, I think, are 12 games out of the division at this point. It's bleak. I think they're still only 5 out of the wild card. I don't know what to say. I mean, what is there to say? Ollie Marmol didn't know what to say after the game. Good question by Katie Wu. I saw it reposted. I think Stu might have posted it from the Valley post-game show where basically she just said, what else is there to do? You've platooned, you've moved guys around, you've brought guys up, you've sent guys back. What's left? And he said, there's not really a good answer. So, I mean, if he's out of answers, I don't know who's got him because he's boots on the ground. I just posted, by the way, the link to the fantasy football channel that I'm starting up. I'm not doing a channel stream right now. I'm doing it on this channel. But if anybody's a football fan, click sub on that. And hey, maybe I'll gain some subscribers while I'm on here talking baseball. I can go 2 birds with 1 stone on the whole thing because I need 44 more subs on that other channel to get to 1,000. Brian said it seemed the fact that, let me try this again. It was the fact that they seemed to love him in the clubhouse. He wasn't really doing anything in the field, but he wasn't bad filling in at third. Yeah, Crawford's not a bad guy, guys. Like, and there might be some people who say, well, why didn't you talk about Crawford like this when he was on the team? Well, I kind of did. If you listen back to some of the recent podcasts where I basically said, look, man, there's no utility to this bench spot. There's no utility. That was the nice professional way to say, it wasn't very useful to have Brandon Crawford on the team from an on-field perspective. In the clubhouse, I'm sure he was great. That doesn't matter really that much compared to what a guy can do on the field and what a guy can provide for a lineup and for the bench. And Ollie Marmol has been managing with at least one hand tied behind his back for a lot of the season with Brandon Crawford. I saw it tweeted. Jeff Jones tweeted a good point about Thomas Sajaci. And look, I went back and forth with Kyle Reese earlier, and he's really smart about all things minor leagues, as you guys know. And he said, well, to my my comment about Sajacy, I don't know why it's not Sajacy other than Matz is going to need the 40-man spot when they sent down Walker and they released Brandon Crawford, not DFA, but just a straight release, which made sense for a guy at this point. I can explain the dynamic of that if anybody doesn't understand it or wants to know. Just let me know in the comments. But when it comes to why not Sajacy, it was this notion of, well, he might not really be ready to be a shortstop defensively at the big league level. But the more I think about it, it's like they've started Gorman against some righties, but he's not even a figment of anybody's imagination to be an option against lefties. And even against righties, it's been bleak. So, and look, you can say he flailed at Devin Williams. A lot of people are going to flail at Devin Williams, but that's if you get bases loaded, one out, runners on second and third, one out, and then they walk intentionally Newpar, you got to come up with a run. And you had Goldschmidt coming up and Gorman coming up. You couldn't paint a better scenario for the St. Louis Cardinals to win a game if we were having the conversation in February. Now that we're having it on August 20th, I think a lot of people probably saw going into that moment like, yep, this could go bad. And it did. They both struck out. That's where they're at right now. And that's why Ollie Marmol after the game says, there's not a lot of answers. I don't have a good answer for a good question. What's left to do? I don't really know. And there are things you could do. It's Paul Goldschmidt doesn't play. But who's that? There's no spite in any of this anymore, but Luke and Baker, he can start at first base and Goldie can be a bench bat. You could do that. I don't know that Luke and Baker is going to outperform Paul Goldschmidt, but maybe there would be the point out there that they owe it to the Cardinals fans to try. Because Goldie, God bless him, has not had it this year. For whatever the reason is, I'm not even trying to speculate on it. I'm not trying to kick Paul Goldschmidt of all people while he's down. It stinks. Nolan Gorman, same thing, man. Nolan Gorman came in and there was a lot of positive narrative surrounding him coming into this season that he was in great shape. He was ready to. He's been overmatched, man, a lot of the season. And so when it pertains to Sajacy, my thought was, well, he could play every single day because I don't really know that Nolan Gorman is very high on the hierarchy right now of playing time. But that's another guy that you don't just want to leave on your bench at the big league level, a la Jordan Walker. You want to get those guys playing time. You want to get those guys opportunities, whether it's at the big league level or a level below it. They got to be playing to be able to iron out their swing at age 23, 22, 24, those sorts of things. So it's tough. Jeff, appreciate the super chat, man. I thought this was going to be a chat tonight where I made $0, but I appreciate it. Who cares about this dumpster fire? They call me a simp. I do want to talk about Mizzou football, but not today. I'll do live streams about Mizzou football on this channel if people will watch them. I just don't want to piss anybody off that's a Cardinals fan and they don't like football. That's why I've created my own, football channel that has all the just the football stuff for fantasy. But Mizzou stuff, there's some crossover in the fan base, and I'm expecting a big year. So yeah, I'll be Mizzou guy as well when the season comes, which I always am on the big show. But anyway, JW asked, why don't they send Gorman down? Yeah, they've been reluctant to do it. It's probably for the same reason they don't want to take Paul Goldschmidt out of the lineup. It may be the thing that is dictated by the performance, but you never envisioned having to ask yourself that question. So they don't ask it. They avoid it. Javero asked if there's a growing divide between Ollie and Mo with the Jordan Walker playing time comments. I don't know if it's a growing divide. And look, Bird calls, if there's let me just start with this. If there's a Mizzou football stream or video on this channel, I would ask you kindly to just not watch it if you're not a fan. If you want to unsubscribe because of that, whatever, but it's a chance for me to be able to talk about other things as well sometimes. So let's be cool. Bird calls, I would appreciate it. But if that's not your choice, y'all do have the freedom to decide what to do. But anyway, the growing divide between Ollie and Mo. Look, I highlighted it on Sunday night's podcast, B-Schaeff Daily. I said, if you listen to the quotes on Sunday morning, the show on KMOX with Tom Ackerman, they sounded like different quotes. Ollie Marmol had a very verbose explanation, a lot of words to explain why the Walker situation was what it was. And sometimes the more you have to talk about something, the more that says maybe you don't even believe that this should be the situation your team is in. I'm not saying that Ollie was being disingenuous. I think he was articulating the game plan as he saw it best for why he was using Walker the way that he was using. But if you asked Ollie Marmol, should Jordan Walker have gotten called up or would you have rather had somebody else? That might have been a different answer. I'm not speaking for the man, but I'm just assuming because we all see the same numbers and the minuscule gain, like it's this dynamic of the Jordan Walker thing uncovered or at least further exemplified some of the organizational dysfunction that I believe has been going on with the Cardinals. And you guys already know what we're talking about. You can name the players that have been ridden into the ground, that have not performed well, had gotten their confidence down, and then they're out of town. You can talk about, guys falling out of favor and then they go somewhere else and do well. I'm not even really talking about all that, but like that's part of this conversation for sure. And I'm just looking at the fact that, Jordan Walker, 22 years old, the most important thing for him has got to be his development. The Cardinals being so desperate to try and gain any minimal edge that they can find, even if it's a small one, they say this is still worth doing the move. That's why you do the Jordan Walker thing, to platoon against lefties, even though he's not better against lefties. He might be better against lefties than Burleson. So that's a reason to have Walker out there for those just couple of opportunities over the past week. And I saw from Katie's reporting, they kind of figured the Carp thing would be short term. So this was like, we're facing 3 lefties in the next week. Let's go ahead and do this. We can backdate Carp by a couple of days, and we'll have Walker for that spell. Useful enough, and it won't set him back too far. That was their thinking. They don't articulate that ahead of time for obvious reasons, because you can't. Because what if Carp has a setback? Well, then that looks foolish. Well, what if there's a lot of different things that could happen? What if Walker catches fire and then it's a different situation? A lot of things that can happen. So that's why they don't always reveal their full hand at the time, even though it would make a lot more sense to the very critical fan base to say, like, I am criticizing this move. Well, we don't always have all the information, but I'm still criticizing that move. It was, even with the explanation that was given, it was ridiculous to have him up when he's finally catching his wind, getting the wind in his sail in AAA. To have that be the moment that they bring him up to basically be the cooler, to cool him down and not have him have anything other than sporadic opportunity at the big league level against the handedness that he's worse against. For Jordan Walker, it was never made any sense. It didn't. And you've seen everybody say so. That's not a hot take. For the Cardinals to do it, though, shows you just how desperate they were to gain any minimal notion of an edge. Because he's like, well, if we have a 16% chance that Burleson or Nootbaar or Gorman or whoever the lefty that would have been in the lineup instead of Walker against those couple lefties that they just faced, if there's a 16% chance that guy succeeds and an 18% chance that Walker succeeds, that minimal 2% is why we're doing this move for a week. And that sounds ridiculous when you're talking about a former top prospect who has fallen on hard times this year and is finally coming out of it. You don't F with that. Not if you're looking for the long-term health of the organization. Not if you're looking out for the long-term health of the player when you have already been criticized for your handling of this player. I'm not saying you have to listen to public criticism. If anything, you should be emboldened not to listen to public criticism. You should ignore it. You should ignore what people like me say, what national pundits say, what people like me write, what the beat writers write. You should ignore it because it's irrelevant to your interests. If you are confident in the way you're handling the ball club, they tell us all the time, drown out the noise. They should be doing that as an organization. So it shouldn't really matter what the criticism is publicly, but it was a bad move. And now they've rectified it, but it's an embarrassment because you have happened exactly what everybody thought would happen. So, and to Joseph's point, I don't think Ollie was full of it with his answer if we're talking about the same thing. If we're talking about the answer on Sunday morning, he explained everything, and it was basically a lot of the stuff that I had already kind of speculated on B-Schaeff Daily and said it kind of seems like this. And he explained why it's got to be an outfielder, that bat has to be. If you're actually going to utilize that role and have that person enter the lineup against a left-handed starter in favor of a left-handed batter. So before it would have been 6 righties in your lineup, 3 lefties, because they didn't have an additional righty on the team. To have it be the 7th righty that you can actually fit in the lineup, he has to play left field, center field, right field, second base. Those are the choices because the backup catcher is right-handed. Wilson's already going to take up the DH against lefties. That is the way that it works. That's all that Ollie explained, and it's correct. It is the case. That being said, that doesn't explain why was the organization in a position to have to make this decision in the first place. Well, that's another question that Ollie is not responsible to answer. That's the man that Tom Ackerman had a little bit later on in his show on Sunday. That's his responsibility to answer. Why he doesn't have a right-handed hitting outfielder in the minors. Why does Jordan Walker have to be the guy for that spot? You might say, well, Luke Baker could have been the guy. Now he is. Well, sure, but they're not facing lefty starters coming up, so it's not really the same. It's apples and oranges. If they were facing a lefty starter coming up, you would not find a 7th righty in the lineup with the current alignment because Luke Baker can't play outfield or second base. So it just would not jive that way. As for Ollie's answer, I thought it was an accurate answer, but it doesn't, and it couldn't because it's outside of his jurisdiction. It couldn't have explained why is Jordan Walker on the team in the first place when, as an organization, you're going to gain much more in terms of his development than the minimal gain that you might receive from him getting to face a couple of lefties this week. That is the public sentiment. It is the sentiment that I share. It is not the way that the Cardinals approached it, and they're insistent that there is no discord between Mozeliak and Ollie Marmol. Okay, frankly, it doesn't even matter at this point because there are differences between the Cardinals' record and the record that they would have if they were in the playoffs. So that's really the bottom line. Like, all of the other stuff doesn't matter. They set a goal. They said our season last year wasn't good enough. It's not who we are. We're not that team that goes 71-91. That's what they told everybody, right? So that the premise of 2024 isn't on August 20th the sort of ominous comments that I saw from John Mozeliak today, which I was not at Busch Stadium. I do a radio show at 4 o'clock. For anybody that needs to know, why isn't Brenden there asking the questions? That was the reason. Tonight, I'm with my son, and we didn't go to the game. That's the reason tonight. Blame me for that, but I had plenty of work that I did during the day. But anyway, as far as this afternoon goes, great that John Mozeliak finally met with the media. Believe it was the first time since opening day that he did a scrum like this one, if I'm not mistaken. Again, I wasn't there, so I couldn't tell you what it looked like, but based on the way the comments were coming out from all the beat writers that were there, that's sort of the indication that I get, is that he talked with the media. And it sort of felt like last year's trade deadline white flag in terms of the tenor of the comments. This is from John Denton's Twitter feed. John Denton, beat writer for MLB.com, covers the Cardinals. From Mo, quote, "There are a lot of demands on our roster right now. We are going to see some changes over the course of the next few weeks. And we also wanted to have the ability to start to take a look at some players before the season wraps up." That kind of feels like transition mode toward not desperate to win every single game and make the playoffs. I'm not saying that there's any tangible change that happens as a result of those comments, because look, at the end of the day, they can still go out and win a bunch of games, and that changes the thinking. Suddenly the Cardinals are right back. They're right back in it. That can happen very easily. They'd have to score more than 2 runs, but like theoretically, it is legal and possible for that to happen. But the tenor and the tone of the Pobo right now is, well, we might have to look at some players the rest of the year. Now, they don't have anybody to trade. You'll certainly be able to see it if they do what the Angels did last year, and ahead of this non-tender, period where you got to be on the new organization to be eligible for the playoffs. Some teams might put guys through waivers and just hope that they don't have to pay their check, don't have to pay their salary, and that's how those moves end up getting made. I don't know if the Cardinals are candidate for that. I don't know if they're planning to do that with anybody, like an Armstrong or a Pham or a, God forbid, a Goldie. I do not believe that's going to happen. Said that on my video earlier today, but I won't discount anything until I hear John Mozeliak say, no, we're not doing that. But we know that, or we are led to believe based on previous reporting, that the organization is kind of looking at, from an ownership standpoint, payroll and not wanting to really raise that. And so it would stand to reason that you might want to lower it if you think you're out of it for the rest of the year. They're still close enough in the wild card, though, that I think that I just don't think you can do it that way. By the way, Mike says, I have 2 tickets. 165B, row 20 for anyone that donates to Brendan's show. Oh, okay. I did not know that Mike was going to say that when he first started. I think Mike was trying to give away these tickets on Twitter. So I was just trying to actually plug Mike to give these away for free to a Cardinals fan who wants to go. And I don't blame anybody for not wanting to go. Mizzou fans, next Thursday, you do need to be at Faurot Field, but that's a different conversation. Eli Drinkwitz said that today. But for Cardinals fans that don't want to go, you got better things to do. You want to, I can't blame you right now. And I do want to be clear about one thing, though. They don't try. They're not playing hard. They don't want to win. They don't care. I still am always going to push back against that, because I think that is a little bit disrespectful to what these guys do day in and day out. And it's not like they're heroes or anything, but they're playing a game. But they do. They work hard at their jobs. That being said, working hard does not necessarily beget results. Ollie Marmol uses the framing of, we didn't get rewarded for the good swings, and they did. Well, I mean, that's true, but you could also make a case that they didn't make enough of those good swings to be rewarded, right? There are nights where you can have those same types of swings and maybe you win, but you're not entitled to it or owed it. But that doesn't mean the Cardinals aren't trying. I just don't like that characterization. I don't think it's fair to the players. The real thing is almost more damning, though, than to say, hey, they're not trying. They don't care about losing. Believe me, they care about losing. The real truth is probably more damning, and the real truth is more than likely they're just not good enough this year. There's not enough talent or team chemistry or a combination of the two, or effective management or effective coaching or a combination of the 4 to be able to make the playoffs this year. That's even more damning, because that signals The players are trying to win. They're trying to play hard. Like Wilson Contreras had a couple of throws tonight that were spot on perfect. Gorman's tag was bad execution on the first one. They got him out on the second one that I happened to see. But that doesn't mean that the players aren't trying. Now, Jeff, appreciate the super chat, my man. I really do. He says, compare and contrast the approach by Mo and Army. Doug Armstrong, Blues Pobo. Not Pobo, Poho, president of hockey ops. Army seems to have so much more urgency in a plan. Mo is lost. I agree that Mo does not have urgency. You can't, and here's where the dysfunction plays into it. You cannot do what you did with Jordan Walker and say, no, we're the organization that uncovers every stone. We leave no stone unturned to try and find a little minimal edge in our roster machinations. You cannot tell me that, and it's August 20th before you release Brandon Crawford. It doesn't fly. It flat out doesn't play. You can't do one and not the other. That's a lack of urgency. I am never going to accuse the players of having a lack of urgency unless I see it with my eyes and it's definitive. The front office, I believe, has a lack of urgency in the way that they are the way that they are putting these things together at times. I don't know how else to articulate it. Henry, appreciate the super chat, brother. Goldie and Nato seem cook. Extend Goldie, yes or no? No, they're not extending Goldie. God bless him, but I don't even think that's on the table. Look, there's no, and I saw that in a comment, reply to me on Twitter where somebody said, oh yeah, now it's time to extend Goldie. And I said, look, man, first of all, Goldie is not the kind of player to chirp as someone who's not giving his all and putting his heart and soul and everything that he's got into this, firstly. So, like, if make fun, like I made a joke, I put out a little meme that just Cardinals things because somebody said, oh, they only lost by 1. That's good for the run differential. I said, hey, you only lose by 1 to maintain the run differential. Just Cardinals things, kind of cheeky, just being silly. But I'm not going to then put Paul Goldschmidt on blast and be like, nope, dude, this or that. Like that, I draw the line there. That's just me. Y'all can do that if you want to. That being said, I'm not saying Henry's doing that at all. But Goldie's performance level is not such that I would think it would make sense to bring him back. And the other part that makes it difficult is even if you wanted to bring him back as a right-handed Matt Carpenter, what the role for Carp is this year, as a guy off the bench to take a late game at bat against a lefty, the problem is Goldie's skill set against those tough fastballs, and that's usually what relievers have, is stuff. That's where he's kind of gotten himself into trouble and has not been able to keep up this year. So I would say his game doesn't quite profile. Matt Carpenter's home run was a 96-mile-per-hour fastball above the zone. That was an impressive swing by Carp. And he's still out there. He's put together a fine season. The Carp signing has been perfectly fine. Crawford did not live up to the billing, and they released him. It took too long, right? Because they were worried about what? About having a backup shortstop for Mason Wynn. Well, that ship sailed, May or June. Yes, he had the back ailment that he was dealing with early in the season, so they wanted to make sure they were covered. Brandon Crawford was an insurance policy, $2 million. Probably a little overpriced, but insurance on if there's not a shortstop in the organization, then you probably should have one in case Mason Wynn gets hurt. And he was hurt in spring with the back. So they had to have somebody. That's John Mozeliak not having other options. Like, you don't have another shortstop in the organization? No wonder they're keeping J.J. Weatherhold at shortstop for as long as they can. See if he can play it. I mean, that's how in the world does that happen? Right? So you felt compelled to hold on to Brandon Crawford for longer than you otherwise should have. And he's not even playing. I had looped back. I'm going to loop back to something I said previously. Jeff Jones had tweeted about Sajasi only playing like 9 games since July 1st at the shortstop position. As you had this roster clog at the big league level that Brandon Crawford is not being useful to the team. Great guy, not useful to the team in 2024 on a Major League Baseball team, which makes it all the more just an out-of-body experience to see Ollie pinch hit him for Ciani the other week. But that's water under the bridge at this point. But in the case of Sajasi, he wasn't really, like, if you were going to prioritize, hey, we need to get more utility to this roster for the manager so he is not drowning with no bench and no right-handed bats off his bench, you would take the Jose Fermin, who's going to play the outfield because you need that. You might need that from somebody at the minor league level to be able to call him up, who's on the 40-man. They don't play him every day in the outfield. How is that possible? Who's not communicating with the... You take the situation with Sajasi. Why is he not playing more shortstop if that's something that you could potentially need from him at the big league level? How does the front office not find a way to make sure they know? But then I said, in fairness, Brandon Crawford's only played 3 games since July 1st at shortstop. This guy was on the roster for 3 games since July 1st at the shortstop position, which was the whole reason he was here. That's not managing, and I'm not talking about managing Ollie Marmol managing. I'm talking about front office, general managing, president of baseball operationing. That's not doing so with urgency. Plain and simple. I'm going to scroll back through some of these comments that I may have missed. Aaron said, I forgot they played tonight. Basically checked out at this point. Disappointing, but I can find better use of my time if they're going to be mediocre. And look, that's hard because again, it's not effort, but that's not a reason not to feel the way that you feel. So they're playing hard and they're trying. That's great. Can they win some games? Because the other 29 teams, I presume, are going to play hard and try. Maybe not the White Sox at this point, but even they beat the Cardinals this year in a series. Flaherty pitching tomorrow. Yeah, I think Juan mentioned, I was trying to find Juan's comment in here. I kind of missed it, though. He said he discovered the Locked On Network, and yeah, JD does a great job for sure. For sure. But we do a daily podcast too, 7 days a week. David says, waiting for the Blues. Cardinals are not going anywhere. Yeah, I mean, the Blues moves today were, and they happened a week ago, but they were finalized today. That's saying, hey, look, we're in a spot that we don't like. We feel yucky about it the last 2 years. There are Blues fans who are like, is Army the guy to lead us out of this? I know he won a cup and everything, but is he the guy? Well, now he's like, look, I'm going to do things that maybe other people aren't willing to do because I don't like this feeling. I don't like this losing. It feels like the Cardinals are very hesitant to ever make moves. And it's not until the obvious is more than obvious that they finally do it. The release of Crawford, the fact that the Walker thing was not working, etc. Brett says, Bleak titled to the video, but it's accurate. I didn't know what else to put. I'm rambling tonight, but I got nothing else, guys. Brett says, happy we don't have two old men left. He's taking up spots on the bench, but hope Crawford ends up signing a one-day contract, retire with the Giants as he should have done. Yeah, the Giants kind of did him wrong, in my opinion. I don't know everything about what their bench has been like this year, but he said, hey, I'm willing to take a bench role. They didn't ask him to come back. I felt bad for B. Crawford for that. They could have done right by him and did not do that. All right. Now, that being said, he could have also retired if the skill set had declined. But I think the Cardinals in that situation, well, I guess you could make a case that they are in that situation. I criticize the Giants for it. How is it any different with Paul Goldschmidt right now? If anything, it's a little bit easier to let a guy like Goldie go, you would think, because he's not a lifetime Cardinal. Crawford only had played for one team. Goldie, that is at least was a long-time Arizona Diamondback. But for the Cardinals, their view might be, look, we can't ask Goldie to be a bench bat now. Just like, hey, like nothing's changed. You're still on the team, but you're like 20% of the role that we asked you to play last year and the 5 years before that. That's why it might be hard to bring Goldie back, even if you wanted to do it on the $2 million Brandon Crawford deal. That's the trick of it. JW asking, why don't they send down Gorman? Yep. I don't have it. I don't have it for you as far as the answer. I think we already kind of touched on that a little bit, but it's just the notion of, it's not something they thought they would have to be in the position to do. So they've resisted it. But if he's not going to play every day, I feel the same way about him I do Jordan Walker. I think they should. And soon you won't be able to send him anywhere because the minor league season is going to be about over. Would have liked to have maybe seen him get some at-bats to try and straighten out down there, but he could have homered off of a few fastballs, come right back, and still struggle with breaking balls. So Bill wants to see them give Luke and Baker a chance. Wouldn't lose anything by letting him play every game from now to the end of the year. Seriously, what do you lose? You don't really lose anything. You're right. I think he shouldn't play every game. I think you don't just bench Paul Goldschmidt indefinitely, but Goldie does not have to play every day the way that he's swinging it right now. Right? It's okay. It's okay to mix and match a little bit. I think that would be okay. Gabe says Gorman should try going back to eating popcorn. At this point, I honestly think it's not a bad idea. Popcorn's great. So, but I think he still eats it. It was a deal of he would with a different oil, like a healthier oil that he would cook it in. Jeff does say it's the most excited we've been about Mizzou football in a long-ass time. You're betting. Yep, it's fun to talk about him every day. 4 p.m., we talk Cardinals and Mizzou on the Big Show. Shameless plug. Download the KTGR app. Brett says new blood in the front office, coaching staff, and if that happens, we can have hope for 2025. I do think we have the personnel. Yeah, I mean, there's offensively, and look, at this point, and I am not like a I need the hitting coach's head on a stake kind of guy. I think that gets a little bit scapegoaty. But what else can you say? If you're Turner Ward and you go to your end of year evaluation, coach, how do you feel you did this year? What is that guy supposed to say? Well, we were really rough with RISP. We had most of our roster fall below expectations. I didn't go in there in the batter's box for them, but if you weren't pleased with the results, I can't hardly blame you. I don't even know what there is to say. You have to try and change something. Why have coaches if this is an acceptable result from that position? Right? And I'm not saying he's not a good coach. I'm saying it's not working. Whatever the philosophy, and the batters are still responsible. I'm not the scapegoat, the hitting coach guy. But you can't just keep everything the same after this year. Brian mentions that JC is not on the 40-man. He's not. But my thing is, a bunch of guys who are, maybe not a bunch, but I bet 2 or 3, mark my words, remember this day, they will, around November, after spending the whole year on the roster, on the 40-man, but not being options to come up to the big leagues, hardly at all, Kloffenstein for an inning. And look, I'm not saying they should DFA Kloffenstein, but there's some guys who they have not been utilized at the big league level. Mozeliak said even today, the 40-man roster exists to be able to supplement the 26. And so we felt like, having Jordan Walker come up for this, and then now having Luke and Baker come up in his stead, those are things that can help the team. So that's what we do. That's the whole point of the 40-man. There will be guys in November that the Cardinals put on waivers. They let them go, and they could have done it today instead of in November, because today would allow you to bring JC up. JC up, Gorman to Memphis, whoever gets DFA'd. I'm not going to give you specific examples of DFA because I don't think it's fair to those players, but you could probably imagine that there are guys that they might be doing that to anyway in the offseason to find space. It's a time-honored tradition in St. Louis. We've seen it before. It's so vitally important to have those guys on the 40-man, but not to use on the 26 when there's a need. But also, you got to have them there until you don't. And so that's my point with this JC thing. You could find the spot. Now, if they want him to have everyday time, then that's great. But they did not prioritize that for their actual top prospect, Jordan Walker. Not to say JC's not a good prospect, but if they're prioritizing, hey, well, no, he's 22, we got to make sure he plays. Hello? Is anybody home? Joseph says, what drugs in the front? Oh, come on. The front office has struggled, but I'm not going to read that one. Why cut Crawford down? Donovan is the backup shortstop. Well, because Crawford has played shortstop 3 times since July 1st. So that is why. He wasn't useful in the role anyway. He wasn't being used. Mason Wynn's the shortstop. Like, Donovan could be the backup shortstop. They could say officially Luke and Baker's the backup shortstop. Mason Wynn's playing it. So what's it matter? Yeah, there will be a day where Donovan probably has to play shortstop unless they bring up JC before such time. Joe says we can get a Mo or Ollie firing after the series if we get swept. Do not agree. Mozeliak will never be fired. However, I do anticipate him to step down. He will either step down after this year or he will step down after next year or sometime in between. He will step aside. How do I know this? He's already said it. Regarding 2025, back in February of 23, he said it's the last contract. He seemed like he was maybe already 1 foot out the door then, but got the new 3-year contract, figured that would be the transition period. 2023 went off the rails. Suddenly, less transition-y for this year. Had to be all hands on deck and very hands on to try to fix it. Did some good things. Not enough of them. Doesn't look like he fixed it. We'll see. Where does that leave you after year 2 of the 3-year extension? We'll see. But Mozeliak will not be fired. He will leave of his own volition when it's time. Why is that? Bill DeWitt is not firing him. Bill DeWitt would be the one that has the power to do it, and he does not want to do it. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just telling you that's what it is. It's as close to a fact as it can be. Can they get together after the season and both mutually go, okay, yeah, I get it, Mo. It's time. And Mo will probably say, I know. Let me be free. But no, and I don't think I'm almost getting fired either. I could be wrong about that. It's almost kind of like too late. You're so far out of it if you were going to do anything for it not to have happened already. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it would almost feel like a mercy killing at this point. Not really true for Ollie because he has more years on the contract. And look, I'm not going to discount the possibility that Mo steps aside after the season and whoever is installed can then make their own evaluation about the manager. I will not necessarily discount that possibility, because for as much as there might be a little bit of friction between Mo and Ollie, it's been downplayed, obviously. And I personally, I don't think it's anything like major. I do think they're largely on the same page, but doesn't mean they're on the same page about everything. But no, I think that's maybe a little bit overplayed, those narratives, even though there is maybe a little bit of, again, it's like, I don't think Jordan Walker was the most useful person to the roster. The guy that manages the roster and has had to deal with the bench that he's had to deal with all year, he might be inclined to agree with that. I don't know. But there's other things that he doesn't control, like the 40-man roster, which brings you to no Thomas Ajaysi. However, yeah, anything's possible. And certainly anything is possible after the season. Joe says they're walking into walls. Well, Rippy, tell me why after a day off, King is out there facing the right-hander meat of the Brewers lineup. I don't know. The righties, like, you can look at the righties that they've had, and I'd have to go back and look at that portion of the game. I'm not going to lie to you and be like, I was totally locked in on every moment of this game. But no, they lost 3-2, man. It's not anything to do with the pitching tonight. Fedde was solid. Fedde had a nice start. 5 2/3. Too many walks, but he kind of has a way to work around him. He gets some ground balls, be able to kind of spray it around a little bit and make sure sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes he walks guys and gives up the home run. But it was mentioned that Skip Schumacher is probably available, and he will be. I mean, he will be. That's just a fact. The Marlins are not going to bring him back. That is also a mercy killing, because he'll get to go on to a better job somewhere else. I don't necessarily know. Moon, I don't know what Moon is getting at. DeWitt Jr. would make change. DeWitt III doesn't care about winning. DeWitt III doesn't run the team. He runs the business side. DeWitt Jr. is still the chairman. He's still in charge, at least for now. That's the way the organization is structured. So if that's what they want to do, then Bill DeWitt Jr. is well within his rights to do that. I'm not going to speculate too much on the Ollie Skip Schumacher thing. Like I said, I'm waiting to see what John Mozeliak does, and then we'll go from there. I want to see what John Mozeliak decides. Is he going to step aside as a result of the steady decline of the organization that he oversees? And there's no spite in it, but it's probably time for somebody else to take a crack at it. If that is the case, and look, I think he'd be more than happy to let that happen, to be honest with you. That's why I keep saying it openly. I'm like, I don't even know if he wants this anymore. Why would you? It's not fun. It's not fun. It's not going well. It's hard. Just there's no shame in going, you know what? I had a long, good run. I don't need this anymore. And so I'm waiting to see what happens there, and then we can talk about manager, coaching staff, whatever that next person might decide. That's what they'll decide. Can't just blame Turner Ward. These guys couldn't hit with Jeff Albert either. At a certain point, time to admit certain guys on the team are washed. Well, here's the deal. I don't think that's a really good comparison. Look at the guys, and the guys you're talking about that are on the team now versus were on the team when Jeff Albert was here. Look at their numbers then and look at their numbers now. It's crazy to like say, yep, they were always stinky. No, Arenado and Goldschmidt were MVP candidates 2 years ago. 3 years ago, they were still really great hitters. Like, it's not this is suddenly this Turner Ward is in and Jeff Albert's out, and these guys are just as bad as they've always been. No, they were good and now they're bad. They were good and now they are not producing. Nobody could, this is why I push back on the Cardinals fans that say, I knew the offense would be terrible. All the guys are bad. Like, if you thought that Lars Nootbaar was going to go from perennial upper 700s OPS, mid to upper 700s to below 700, that Gorman was going to go from, 700s to 590, or he's above that, obviously. 690. Like, if you thought all five of those guys, Arenado was going to go from 777 or whatever he was last year down to what he is. If you would have thought that Goldie would go from 810 down to 680. If you would have thought that Jordan Walker would go from 787 down to whatever he is this year. All of that was going to happen? Nobody thought that. You could have thought they didn't have enough because the way they were built was to need a top 10 offense. I said it a bunch because their pitching staff was not going to be top 10. Bullpen was maybe going to be, and it has largely been. The rotation was never going to be top 10, not even on its best day with all five of them healthy. It was never going to happen. So they were going to have to do more with the offense. In Rob's defense, he said, I've always believed that Gorman was an overhyped Justin Smoke. Yeah, and there were holes in Gorman's swing the whole way, so that one I'll give you. I just think to imply that you knew everybody on that list, there's like 5 or 6 guys I could name, would have a 20 to 30 to 50% decline in their production. I don't think that was the most likely outcome. And so you could take Mo off the hook in a vacuum and say, well, he fixed the pitching. He didn't know the offense was going to stink. It's his whole team, though. Like, when you're in a position to open yourself up to the potential that one more bad season means the time to go, then that's the way it can go sometimes. Sometimes a team underachieves. All of it counts. Timothy, how'd they get here, man? Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, too. It's been a steady decline in terms of the willingness to make bold moves and to make a variety of moves. The Cardinals have a couple moves. They don't have the Cardinals right now, and in the last few years, are like me when playing Super Smash Brothers on the Nintendo 64 or the GameCube back in the day. And I promise you this is going somewhere. On Nintendo 64, Super Smash, or GameCube, I like the GameCube version best. I would always be Kirby. Always be Kirby. Because my friends that had the game, well, they played it all the time. They beat the game, right? I didn't have the game when we were in, like grade school, middle school. I have it now. But back then, I didn't have that game. So I would play it when I'd go to their house. But they'd kick my butt. Because they could be any character. And they could do all that character's moves. They could be Link, and they could do everything Link could do. They could be Seamus and do everything that Seamus could do. Zelda, they could be all the characters. Pikachu, I could be Kirby, and I could jump up real high to avoid them, and I could smash down B to hope that I could smash them on top of the head and maybe kill them once in a while. That I was a one-trick pony. I feel like the Cardinals are a little bit of a one-trick pony. There's a couple teams Mo can trade with, but can't trade with the other teams, really. There's a couple of types of moves that we know. The very popular one these days is having the outfielder who is a really prized prospect, but then he kind of fades out, and then you make sure to trade him when he's at his lowest value, and it not even necessarily be the wrong move because things had gotten that bad with the relationship between the outfielder and the organization that you almost have to because it's the fair thing to the player at that point. It's happened twice. Like, they've got a couple of moves that are the go-tos, and sometimes they work. There are universes, y'all have seen the Marvel movies, right? There are universes where, there are multiverses where, hey, sometimes that might work out. Getting Lynn, Gibson, and Sonny to pack up the rotation, maybe that actually works. And if you do it 1,000 times on the simulation, maybe 1 or 2 of those 1,000 times, they are a top 10 rotation. That could have been this universe that we live in. It wasn't, but it could have been. And that's kind of feels like the way that the Cardinals approached it. But they didn't, that's not fair to Mo because they didn't need that group to be a top 10 rotation. They needed that group to take their starts 30 times a year and to keep them in the games and be 19th in ERA. And right now they're like probably 23rd or so in ERA. So they've fallen a little bit below that. But 19th or so would have, that's what they were for a while, and it was flying. It was going okay. They needed the bullpen to make sure to be top 10, and it has been. But they also needed the offense. And we happen to be in the version of the multiverse where the offense is a bottom 10 unit every which way you cut it. And that version of the Cardinals doesn't make the playoffs this year. And when there's an example for how to maybe, okay, what do we do to fix it? They got one move. Well, we could try down B again. Maybe this time down B will work. What do you think? It's all they know how to do. They don't have the Doug Armstrong move to, and look, this is not a fair comparison to hockey because it's a completely different set of circumstances, but they can't sign the offer sheet for Edmonton's players. Even if that was a rule in baseball that they could do, the Cardinals would be reluctant to do it for whatever reason, right? They're not making those savvy, bold moves anymore. They're making the predictable moves 20% too late after everybody else knew they were going to make them. That is the way it feels. That's not a problem that I have with the coaching staff or the manager or the players. That's a problem that I have with the way that the team is constructed. This was going to be the year where we say, we kind of have to judge John Mozeliak and his front office for how this thing goes, right? Because he told us last year was an anomaly, and he asked Cardinals fans, you guys, for patience. Here we are. So there doesn't have to be a spiteful thing about it. You don't have to say hateful things to John Mozeliak. He's a person. He's a human being. I think he is trying, but at this point, it is getting to the point where I just don't know what else there is to say. They have been built in a way that is detrimental to being able to succeed. They can down B as much as they can the rest of the year, and if they down B their way into a 17-game winning streak, then maybe all this goes away. But they've used that up for the century. They've done that. I don't know that another one of those is coming. Cards play to their opponent's level. Is that the manager's fault? Nah, I mean, that is maybe something in terms of like the tone that you set, but you can draw a lot of the Cardinals' problems this year back to the fact that they don't have an offense that's producing. When you don't hit, it looks like you don't care and you don't try, but that doesn't necessarily indicate. If you're not running hard on the bases, call that out, Cardinals fans. You should. At this point, that is an indication that the team is letting off the gas. They need to be the team that leaves it all beyond reproach. They're hustling. They're busting their ass every single time to every base. If that is the image that they want to portray, that they're the guys who try hard to the bitter end, then be that team, right? And I'm not saying they are or aren't lately. I'm just saying that's what that would look like. And then I will continue on to the next sentence that it doesn't functionally matter whether you do that. If you win the game, then it matters. They have to win games. I'm not on the ledge, Javero, but I mean, for real, I don't like to be sort of, gaslit into being told like, oh, this isn't actually an issue. Well, I see that has maybe happened to Cardinals fans, and it's undeniable at this point that the level of play has declined. So they have, and I've said I'm willing to give them the 36 games or whatever's left to fix it. And if they do, then great. There's no issues. Everything's good. If they don't, but then can we speed this up and evaluate the front office for what this has been? That's fair. I think that's completely fair. If Mo were to disagree with the characterization, I try to be respectful and fair, responsible as I can be. I'm sure I get some things wrong, but if that characterization is not a fair one, somebody can let me know and let me know why. I'm happy to correct certain things if it's needed. Jovero says, former esports coach, you're speaking my language. I'm down being to oblivion, baby. I'm Kirby. I should have a Kirby t-shirt for my next live stream. That's all I had. That's the only move I had in my bag. Cardinals have been half measures for years. They go halfway in, expect people to show up. Yeah, it's a fine line, Rob. It's the one that hopefully keeps the stands packed. Well, today they announced 30,022. And I've said jokingly for like months and months, and even going back into a previous year, they will never announce less than 30,000. There will be tickets that get lost, and I guess we must have sold them before they'll announce less than 30,000. I used to think. With the crowds looking like they're looking, I tell you, that's paid attendance. That's not butts and seats. Because tonight, and I wasn't there, so I can't be overly critical of this. Dude, it's not 30,000 people there. There might not have been 20. Might not have been 15. Joe says, Brenden, watch any Yankee podcast. The fans are impossible to please. This is a love fest compared to that. Yeah, I just feel bad, though, because the Cardinals are technically your favorite team, right? Like, that should be... You should want to ride or die with those guys. And it, to me, would end up feeling icky if you were spiteful enough toward your own guys and then they turned it around. Are you really going to feel like you can enjoy it after? And I had to learn that a little bit when it came to some like Mizzou stuff. And obviously, I was the same way you guys. I'm not going to lie to you. When I was in high school and previous about Cardinal stuff, oh my gosh. Yeah, I was in that boat for sure. Then my perspective changed because I got to see it up close. And I was like, oh, all right. These guys are doing a job. They're doing the best that they can. Sometimes things can get understood, and sometimes you're just not good enough. And that's when it's the hardest. When there's no spite in it, you're just not good enough, but you told the fans you were going to be, and then it's like, well, now everybody's disappointed. So I 100% understand where you're coming from. BC mentions Yankees are first in revenue, though, so they should expect more. Yeah, but Cardinals fans have supported this team so very well over the years. Attendance, TV ratings, getting that big contract. Fair is fair in terms of, I think being able to give back to the fan base, be like, you guys deserve a winner. And I think Cardinals fans do. But at the same time, like, just try to keep it respectful. That's the only thing I'll say. Mike says, I'm sorry, Brenden, I can't get anyone to take me up on the donation thing for the tickets. If I had Mizzou tickets, I could have helped you. Yeah, no kidding, dude. I'm trying to get to that game on Thursday. That's my next, I don't know if it'll happen. Joe says Bloom or some other upside won't be married to the coaching staff or players. Correct. I think, or he said, meant outsider, not upside. I think the notion of somebody else comes in and can evaluate this roster for what it is without, having the preconceived notions. would be such a valuable and effective thing, because you know what you get is what you get. Brandon, appreciate you, man, for the super chat. Wants to know the percentage that Ollie is back next year, that Arenado is back, any minor leaguer starters with legit opportunity to start in the rotation next year on opening day. Yeah, we can talk about all those things. Let me find, I think there might have been a super chat that I didn't get to. Yeah, Brandon, I'm sorry about that, dude. I'm sorry that I missed your super chat the first time, dude. That's my fault. That's 100% on me. So Brandon, appreciate you, dude. So now I will answer all your questions. Yeah, that just slipped through. That's my bad. It is a good question. Percentage that Arenado's here. You know, there's a lot of variables that go into this, because it's going to be, is it a new front office? Is it Hein Bloom? Is there an edict to lower the payroll? Will they trade them away without caring what they get because they're going into hibernation on payroll? Does Arenado ask to go somewhere else? I don't think it's 100% that he's here. I don't think it's like a 20%. I go 50-50. It's a coin flip to me, to be honest with you. And then to answer your Marmol question, coin flip. I'll go like 55% that Ollie's here, 50% that Arenado is. Because you don't have to have Arenado here to have Ollie here. If Arenado, if the Cardinals are trimming payroll and they change front offices and everything's different, like everything, like massive changes, like head spinning, what in the world is happening? I can't keep track of it. Level changes. Ollie Marmol, it's not like he's like the highest paid manager in baseball, I wouldn't think. If it's a year where you need to kind of evaluate the roster and you think, hey, organizationally, we actually like this guy. We think he's a good manager. We think he makes good bullpen moves. Cardinals fans might not think it, but they don't have to. The org doesn't have to care about that. They have to think, like, we already got him on the payroll. Why would we, if we're not like trying to win in 2025, if we're scaling back payroll, I almost think you could almost inverse the is Ollie here, is Arenado here question. Right? And I'm not saying that it's got to be one or the other. That's not the way I want to characterize it. But if you think about it, if they're going to lower payroll, Arenado knows, hey, we're not raising payroll. He has that talk with the front office and then says, hey, or his reps say, hey, maybe you trade our guy to get him somewhere where he can win. If you guys are going in another direction, there's no spite in that, but can we get our guy somewhere that maybe he can win? If that's not, the immediate goal for this team. The Cardinals could say, hey, but we think we're going to be back in 2026 and you're still going to be under contract. Maybe you stay. And he could be like, yeah, but I don't want to. Like, this is all hypothetical. But if that kind of conversation happens, that doesn't have to mean, well, Ollie Marmol's gone. No, if anything, it's like, why pay another manager if they're going that way? I'm not saying that fans are going to love that. I'm not saying it's right, not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying evaluating for what I think it might be. Henry says over 30K today. Don't blame the fans, though. Sad. No, I'm not blaming the fans. And by the way, there weren't 30K there. 30K paid. Tommy Edman is on fire. That's what I'm seeing in the chat, which I told you would happen. I also told you Dylan Carlson would happen, which is fun. Yeah, so Tommy Edman he's up with the Dodgers. Huh? I must have missed that. Starting at shortstop. That's awesome. I will root for Tommy Edman every time. Ace said, I'm so tired of hearing that Ollie's a good coach when everyone knows he's garbage. Sorry, but it's true. And I'm not saying I'll use her. No, it's okay. Look, I'm going to be respectful. I do think Ollie has the characteristics to learn from some of the things that he doesn't do as well or respond to as well and be able to be a good manager. And I think today he, under the right circumstances, would be a very good manager today. I don't think he has the circumstances of the roster to back him into doing that right now. No manager is going to look good with a losing record. That's just the truth. But I've never, the number of times Cardinals fans have an issue with, like, tangibly with Ollie Marmol managing a bullpen, I have an issue with the decisions he makes, like maybe 1/10 of that or 1/20th of that time. I think a lot of times you guys are wrong. No offense. It's okay. You tell me I'm wrong all the time. I think a lot of times Cardinals fans are wrong and they have a misunderstanding of like what actually goes into managing a bullpen and why certain things are. They just want to be mad. And it's not all of you, but it's some of you that definitely are that way. We can be honest. We're adults here. Sometimes you guys get it wrong, but sometimes I get it wrong. And you'll be willing to tell me, and I think we can be friends at the end of the day, as long as we just all kind of understand where each other's coming from. Juan wanted to know, when I bought everyone's Dylan Carlson stock, did I load up on Tommy Edman stock? I think I did say Tommy Edman was going to be a huge postseason contributor for the Dodgers, is what I said the day of the trade. So if that counts as buying his stock, then yes, I did. Paul says, why does Goldie always take the first pitch fastball down the middle every time? I mean, it's for the same reason that Wilson took the two-strike pitch right down the middle, was guessing, changeup, was, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know, man. They're not feeling themselves at the plate. It's hard. I would go up there and do the same thing. I would never want to swing. I would just hope I didn't get hit, right? Facing a major league pitcher. Granted, I'm not being paid to be a major league player, but I try to have that perspective. It's hard to hit a baseball. Sometimes I think Goldie's up there guessing, not really confident in what he's doing this year because the numbers, they kind of leak into the back of your mind. And so that is what it is. The Ollie hiring never made sense, if we're being honest. That was very outside of the box and it fell so flat. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but that's fine for people to think that way. To me, it looked very good the first year. And granted, you had future Hall of Famers on your roster. It helps. Having a good roster helps. Newsflash. The firing of Mike Shildt is what was outside the box and came out of nowhere, right? People didn't see that coming. Inside the org, they did. And look, if the Cardinals say, hey, there was philosophical differences and this guy was not the right fit, but they're the ones that are now struggling and picking up the pieces, I get it that Cardinals fans pine for Mike Shildt because they're like, well, that guy never did anything wrong. The guys that they left us with are. But I don't think there was this like Ollie versus Shildt thing. So it's not really, I think Ollie was, they thought, going to be the guy that could steer the ship that they had built. The problem is they gave him a ship that was not in good order. And that is how I feel. So, right. Yeah. Mike Shildt, I don't think it was like Mike Shildt got fired because we got to have this Ollie guy as a manager. And if we don't, we're going to regret it for the next couple of decades because that's how good Ollie is. I think the guys in charge didn't like the way that Shildt, was handling things in certain areas. And that's more behind the scenes stuff. And I don't blame a fan base for going, that stuff doesn't matter. Did the man win? Because Tony La Russa was prickly. A lot of other guys had high expectations. Cardinals fans here, yeah, Mike Shildt, he was hard on some certain kind of guys and would kind of get real intense and stuff. And it's like, so you're saying he really pushed people and tried to have a standard? I kind of like it. I don't think a lot of Cardinals fans necessarily hear that. And, and I also think I don't want to delve into too much of the hearsay on the Shildt stuff because I think it's not fair to him. Because it's not like it's information that I know firsthand from him or the people that were involved. So always heard a player's second year is bad with hitting. Do you agree? Yeah, sophomore slump. They call it that for a reason. But to go from like Jordan Walker's 787 OPS to just flatline and to go in Gorman's third year to go from, he made strides last year. And then what can you say about Gorman this year? It's like, it's just, he's lost. Dan says, agreed with trading DC, but to trade him for a low leverage reliever that is the free agent at the end of his season is baffling. I would have held on to Carlson rather than trade him for that. I disagree, Dan. 100% could not disagree with you anymore. And you're seeing the reason why with Tampa Bay. He's a good player. He's not a great player necessarily, but he's a solid major leaguer that was buried in St. Louis. It was never going to happen. They could have buried him in Memphis for the rest of the year and then what? Traded him in November, December for still nothing because his value would have been nothing. The ship had sailed. They had their chance and they blew it on Carlson. Carlson blew it himself. Some of it is, if you're in a situation where the cards are stacked against you a little bit, you got to have a little bit of grit, fight back, and Dylan didn't do that in St. Louis to a consistent enough degree to where he didn't find enough of his motivation to thrive under duress. And some personalities are like that. Some personalities need to be nurtured. And there's nothing wrong with that, dude. I love Dylan Carlson. I want him to thrive. So that's why I said, you got to trade this kid. He doesn't deserve what would happen to him if he was just here for another couple of months. It's just not right. So they traded him, and I'm glad they did. Rob said, didn't see the game tonight. Don't know what Gorman did. Well, I mean, the main thing we're talking about is ended the game on a strikeout. Devin Williams changeup, which is a good pitch. Good pitch. And Devin Williams has that pitch. So Rob says, David says, I don't think Carlson wanted to be here anymore. Well, of course not. Why would that be a surprise to anybody? Did you see how things went at the end when he didn't play? Yeah, of course he didn't want to be here. Did not have to say that publicly. I think he was excited by the opportunity to maybe have a new start. Who wouldn't be in his situation? Believe me, he was thrilled to be able to go. I can promise you that. Cardinals and managing prospect playing time has been a disaster. Look at how they handled Randy and Sandy. Frustrating when the franchise doesn't learn from mistakes. Yeah, It's a little stale. It's just a little stale with the front office at this point. Runtondo, there's a little down on the farm. Walk-off grand slam tonight in Springfield. Good stuff. And Rob doesn't want to be here. Well, click off of it, buddy. I don't want to be here either. I'm going to let this podcast go here soon. We're at an hour. That's plenty. That's plenty. I do want to do a little fantasy football thing tonight. It might have to be 30-second draft picks, but I think I do want to do it. Thank you guys so much for joining the stream, for watching the channel all year, for doing a little chat revenue tonight on the super chats, which really helps me out as well. If y'all that aren't channel memberships want to join the membership, there is a link in most of the videos. I don't think I put it on this one, but yeah, feel free to just DM me or ask me questions about it if you want to know. In the off season, I'll plug that a little bit more because we'll have more exciting stuff to talk about because it'll be about the future and the possibilities. For right now, the Cardinals are down in the muck. They slid down even a little bit further tonight. Didn't score. For a while, wasn't sure they were going to get very many hits. Like, it's just what it is. So that's going to do it for the podcast. I hate to end it on that note, but that's really all I've got. We're getting some live updates from the Dodgers game. I got to get off the stream so I can watch the game, I guess. If that's still going on. When Gallen and Sandy got traded, were they certified good? The Cardinals did not think very much of Gallen when they traded him. I can tell you that. Sandy, they might have been able to anticipate, but yeah. Juan Garcia, you'll be happier than a jackass eating thistle. Yeah, you sure will. I can't play the audio drop. That's pre-recorded, so I can't play that when it's live. I probably could. I just don't know how. I guess I just would have to do it, and then it would play. But anyway, thank you guys. Appreciate it. We're going to end the podcast there. And we're certainly going to talk to you next time on b-schaeff Daily Peace. That is a thing that we definitely will do. Good night, everybody. Peace.